Chapter 6 Two Melodies. The baritone blast of the grace horn sounded. Goden, Farah, and Senna packed up their landscaping implements and headed back to the Grid 431 causeway doors. Goden came to a sudden stop at the sight of Hella and Skature leaning against the doors. He cocked his head. "You're already here? How did your blessing go? Were you able to complete it?"
"Yes, sir. No problem there at all, Goden. We may have even set a Grid 431 record. What do you think, Miss Hella?"
Hella grinned. "Skature showed me the secret to it. After that, it was simple. We must have set a record," she boasted. "I'm very glad to hear it," Goden said. "It means we'll be able to enjoy our first meals together today back at the Cull. And Skature, it'll be a chance for us to talk."
Of course. I'm looking forward to it,"
Skature assured him. At that point, the doors to the causeway opened, and the aspirite beneath their feet illuminated, marching them to their waiting peaceman escort. Once they were back at the Cull, Goden asked the others if they would allow Skature and him to speak alone while they ate their meals at the common table. "Fine by me," Hella replied. "Senna, grab your meal and follow me to my room." The two of them hurried off. Farah stood obstinately for a moment before huffing. "Fine, I'll just be over on the bench if you want to add me to the next conversation." Goden and Skature took their seats at the table. As usual, Goden sat with his back to the Cull doors, but Skature elected to sit beside him. As they opened their meal bags, Goden spoke up. "How have the last couple of days been for you, Skature? Do you know why you replaced our other Cullmate at such an hour?"
"You know, Goden, there are just a million strange things I'm still trying to figure out about how the Rayans think and why they do what they do, you know,"
he replied in a strange, folksy way. "Certainly, a million strange things indeed." Goden raised his apple to his mouth before adding, "Although, you seem to have a fair share of answers as well." He took a bite. Skature chuckled and began to cut up his rations with old, worn utensils.
"I'm sure we've all come to some conclusions, but who's to say what's real? Sometimes I think they change up their routines just to mess with our heads."
He looked at Goden out of the corner of his eye.
"You know, that prayer of yours this morning, not many round here know about it, let alone have it memorized."
Goden swallowed his bite. "How many different Culls have you been a part of, Skature?"
"Oh, a number of them for sure. Only ever come across that prayer once, though. An old timer knew it. I'm just glad to see it's making its way around the young kids here's all. I especially like that part about the unvanquished flame of Grom. Do you know much about the tales of the unvanquished flame there, Goden?"
"They aren't tales," he retorted. "But you know that, Skature, don't you?" Skature's mouth twisted, and he nodded. "You must know I felt it when we first clasped shoulders on your arrival," Goden explained. "I've met very few Theutons who could wield the flame. I'm assuming that's why you're so interested in our Hella." Skature chuckled, then looked down at his meal.
"You know, Goden, I've come into contact with quite a few people who could wield the flame, and wield it well. I could tell you were initiated in it yourself, but, and don't take this personally, you seem like you haven't used it in a while, or even wanted to. Hella, on the other hand, well, now she's a novice, and yet houses one of the largest natural flames I have ever encountered."
"Yes, she happened upon it quite by accident the other day. In fact, suspiciously close to your unexpected arrival." Goden tilted his head at Skature. "And while her flame was impressive, it wasn't any bigger than what I felt in you when you entered the Cull. In fact, I thought your restrained flame was equal to hers at full blast." Skature met Goden's eyes again.
He chuckled. "So you're not as amateurish as I first assumed. But you see, that leaves me with a peculiar question. If you have an above-average understanding of using the unvanquished flame, why, oh why, is yours so weak?"
"Skature," Goden sighed. "I spend most of my days fulfilling blessings in Impul's city grids. Out there, I have no chance to wield the flame. Even this Cull isn't the easiest place to do it."
"Oh, why not?"
"I sat at this table with my back to the Cull doors on a hunch, a suspicion I've had for some time now. I'm not even sure why, but I can feel the Cull is being monitored in that direction." Scatter glanced behind him and then back at Goden. Here's the thing, Scatter, Goden continued. I haven't told anyone about this, no one at all. Yet, somehow, you chose to sit beside me today with your back to the doors as well. Why? His tone was bordering on the accusatory now. Scatter drew himself up in his seat.
Well, I can't decide if I'm more impressed by your deduction or your intuition, my good man. I'm gonna tell you something that might sound suspicious, but I promise it's not what it seems.
Goden narrowed his eyes at Scatter, who began stretching his arms above his head and backward, almost in a yawn.
Over there and over there.
He pointed vaguely with his outstretched arms, subtly enough that it wouldn't be obvious to the casual observer.
You'll notice a couple of larger, half-domed asperite gems. Those aren't your typical asperite adornments. They call them optical nodes.
Goden was now also peering in the direction Scatter had indicated, locating each half-dome.
I'm sure you remember being indoctrinated in the Ray and Enlightenment chambers as a child,
Scatter snarked.
You must recall the projection glass they use for the lessons. The Rayans get the most out of their asperite technologies. They can send and receive images through them. So there's got to be some grown-forsaken Rayan dog on the receiving end or wherever that node transmits to, watching us this whole time.
Goden stiffened. While I'm grateful for this information, Scatter, no Thutan could know this. What exactly are you? No more half answers, please. I need to know, for the safety of our Cull.
Safety? Oh, yes, of course. The safety you all enjoy while locked in the Rayan capital,
Scatter jeered, implicitly distinguishing himself from the rest of them.
Goden, I think I like you, and I'm starting to understand you, but I'm not sure how much I trust you yet, and this you can take personally. When I look at you, I see a Thutan man of respectable age for the cause, one who has intimate knowledge of the unvanquished flame of Holy Grom, yet one who hides and shuns its blessed light within himself while pretending it's for some reasons of safety.
Scatter spat on the ground at that word, which caused Goden to stiffen in his seat.
The Culls aren't the ideal place to learn to wield the flame, I agree,
Scatter conceded.
But when, oh when, do you expect to bear the full glory of Grom? Ever? Are you prepared to die here in safety without ever knowing the extent of your birthright? Because yes, I'm not from the cause, but neither am I some Rayan spy.
Scatter's eyes burned bright crimson red as an ominous power radiated from them.
I am an unadulterated, undefiled, and unapologetic warrior of the most holy and loving Grom. And that is something no amount of safety could part me from.
Goden began to tremble at Scatter's rebuke, partly from intimidation and partly from the pangs of guilt he felt, his own chest beginning to glow in reaction to Scatter's flame. And, to his eternal shame, his initial reaction was to pull his jacket over it.
Know this, Goden. I am not your enemy. In fact, I may be the greatest hope Cull 19 has ever known. But you are not my equal. Though, if you happen to have the love of Grom compel you one morning, maybe after one of those prayers you recite to her, and want to truly receive the fullness of your Thutan birthright, I'd be happy to lead you out of safety and into glory.
At that, Scatter stood up, grabbed the rest of his meal, and stalked out of the common, leaving Goden with his head in his hands. He looked over at Farah, who was watching from the bench with her mouth agape. Are you okay, Goden? What did he say to you? I'm fine, Farah. Leave me be. I'm tired. He slouched back down in his seat and stared off in the distance while he finished his meal. After dressing down Goden, Scatter headed towards his sleep chamber for the night. Halfway down the path separating each chamber, he heard someone hiss at him. Scatter, Hela called. Quick, come here. I want to show you something before the floors turn on.
I've always got a moment for you, Miss Hella. What's on your mind?
He turned to enter her room instead.
I see young Santa's already here keeping you company.
Don't worry, I've caught him up on everything from today, she said excitedly.
Oh, everything?
Skatter raised an eyebrow. It's okay. He doesn't tell others my secrets, and I don't keep anything from him. Skatter looked over to Senna.
Well, that's a fine trait, young man, and I trust your sister's judgment entirely.
He placed his hand over his chest and half bowed. Okay, come here. I've got to show you this quickly, Hella gestured. Skatter obliged and followed her lead as she pointed towards the floor by her bed. Look at this, she said, beaming. He put his hands on his hips and squinted at the asperite floor where she was pointing.
That's a fine bit of asperite. Am I missing something? The interesting part?
He said, scratching his head.
Was it a spider or a lizard or...
No, look, get close, Hella said with frustration as she grabbed Skatter by the shirt and pulled him towards the floor. He knelt down, partly so that he didn't faceplant from Hella's exuberant jerk. From this distance, he saw it.
What is this now? It's not a spider, but some spider cracks from an impact of sorts.
Exactly, but that's not the really interesting part, Hella interrupted. The floor is broken. It's broken, Skatter, see? It's been like that for the last couple days. Since this lighting orb fell from the ceiling, it smashed the floor and now it doesn't pull me out of bed in the morning.
Really?
It's been 2 mornings since it fractured. No morning pull. It doesn't even light up anymore, Hella confirmed. I think the orb broke the asperite. Skatter began stroking his chin as he sat down on the floor beside the crack.
No, it didn't break the asperite itself. A lightning orb can't do that. But look where the cracks ruptured the floor.
He traced the lines with his finger. They're all in between the asperite, Senna said with a rush.
Nailed it,
Skatter affirmed. Whoa, you're right. Nice catch, Finn, Hella congratulated her little brother.
Finn?
Hella colored. Oh, yeah, that's my nickname for him.
I love it. And yes, you're very smart, Finn. None of the asperites suffered damage,
Skatter confirmed.
But that doesn't explain why the floor is malfunctioning. Can you think of why?
The 2 siblings said nothing.
Okay, it's getting late and our little chap may get cut short soon by the still functioning floors. There's a very important bit of information you need to know about Rayans and their precious asperite,
Skatter explained.
Well, it's true they can cast their will on us through the gems. They need to be in contact with the gems to do so. They figured out a long time ago that instead of always having physical contact with asperite, they could use a certain metal between the gems and their body as a transmitter. It made it easy to build armor, tools, and weapons from this metal with asperite molded into them. It's called Trillium.
Senna turned and clutched his sister's arm. Hella, they're sabers. Remember the Peaceman? When he unlocked the utility ladder, there was asperite in the center of his blade. That's it, Hella exclaimed. And when those 4 cowardly Peacemen held that man in place and cut him to pieces, they were pointing their sabers at him. That's what held him frozen above the ground without any asperite floors.
You got it. That's how they do it, all right,
Skatter confirmed.
When exactly did you see this, Miss Hella?
It was the day before my explosion in the understreet. Me and Finn saw it happen while we were cleaning grime on top of a building in the inner round.
I see. I bet that made you furious, didn't it? Seeing one of our own butchered like that.
It was easily the most horrifying experience of my life, she explained.
You know, the kind of explosion you had the other day, that usually isn't possible for a novice flame wielder. I was wondering if Goden had showed you how to bring it forth at some point before then, but after speaking with him today, I'm sure that wasn't the case,
Skatter said, rolling his eyes.
I wonder if seeing that helpless Thutan cleave to bits was the actual first time the flame awakened inside of you.
This time, Hella was the one whose head snapped up in realization. Finn, remember the night when we were talking through the wall? I asked you if there was a red glow in your room. That must have been coming from me the whole time.
Well, there we have it. Mystery solved. Ha ha,
Skatter announced.
Now, back to the other mystery, this floor.
He started running his fingers across the cracks again.
Let's work this out because I have a theory. We know Rayans can transmit their will through trillium metal that's in contact with Asperite, so those floors must be getting their orders from a Rayan somewhere else. And seeing as the malfunctioning bit here only has damage between the Asperite that's embedded in it,
he bent down to put his face as close to the cracks as possible.
I'm willing to bet they're all connected by a little bit of trillium metal.
Both Hela and Senna got down close to the cracks.
Look,
Senna breathed. Right there, and there. You can see little bits of silver coloring. I see it, Hela said. It was on either side of every crack between each Asperite gem.
Hela, my dear, Finn, my boy, I do believe we've just unlocked how your Rayan masters control you here in Ipoh.
Hela and Senna looked at each other with excitement on their faces. But then Skatter stood up, grabbed the fallen lighting orb, and stepped into the doorway to Hela's chamber. After bending down to examine the Asperite pad that led from the hallway to the chamber, he stood up, raised the orb over his head, and slammed it onto the floor with a loud bang. Whoa, what are you doing? Hela hissed. Skatter crouched back down to inspect the fresh damage he'd just caused. He nodded, then laughed to himself.
Miss Hela, this wonderful accident of yours has given me and my compatriots a brand new opening into the inner workings of this wretched rat trap of a city. I need to let them know about it in person. So I'm going on a little outing tonight to stretch my legs a bit and meet my friends from the action group. They'll know what to do with this most illuminating information.
What do you mean? Meet up? How? Are they here? Hela couldn't make sense of what he was saying.
Not exactly here, but in the general area, yes. Other calls. They're investigating other potential wielders like yourself who have been popping up lately.
Okay, but how can you meet up after the sleep floors turn on if they're in other culls?
Hold that thought. I got to do something quickly before those cursed things turn on.
Skatter closed his eyes. His chest suddenly lit up red, then off again in a repetitive pulsing rhythm. He opened his eyes, the red light from his chest turning off at exactly the same moment. What did you just do? Hela asked. The perplexed tone in her voice matched the look of her brother's face, who stood in wide-eyed silence beside her. Skatter grinned.
I called a meeting. I'll give them a couple minutes before the next message. Then it's time for me to get mobile.
He could tell by their blank stares that his response hadn't satisfied the curiosity of the two youngsters, so he sighed and began to elaborate.
All right, I got a couple minutes like I said, so I'll explain a bit. Consider it more the education God never gave you,
Skatter snarked.
Once you can wield the unvanquished flame with some skill, you can ignite it at will. Those around you who are sensitive to it will feel your ignition as it'll have an effect on their embers as well. We Thutans use this in different ways.
Skatter pointed to his chest.
The signal I just emitted by pumping my flame in that particular pattern will be felt by my team. It tells them there's an incoming message from me and to find a place where they can receive it in private. 2 minutes from now, I'll contact them again to set up our meeting tonight.
That's amazing! You can send messages just by pumping your flame in patterns? Hela asked with excitement.
Well, yes, but that's not exactly what's about to happen,
Skatter clarified.
I pump the flame to let them know there's an incoming message, but I'll send that message with another ability the unvanquished flame has. This is the real trick, he said with a wide smile. When you get proficient at using the flame, I'll show you how to use it as a visual portal for other flame wielders. It's called the Eye of Grom. They will be able to see through my eyes while I use it. They can't hear me, but I can still get the basics of my message to them. Then we meet in person for the real debrief.
The Eye of Grom, Hela whispered. Wow.
Yes, indeed. And now I've waited long enough for them to get ready, so if you'll excuse me for a moment.
At that, he looked away from the two. Suddenly, both of his eyes turned entirely red, not just his irises. Skatter waited a couple of seconds, then started to make various coded hand motions in front of his line of sight. He held the lighting orb up in front of his face, pointed to the fresh damage on the floor at his feet, then motioned the light orb towards the damage. After several more hand motions, his eyes turned back to normal.
Aha, there we have it,
he said with a smile. What did you just tell them, Scatter? Senna asked.
Well, little Finn, I told them we're going to meet up tonight 1 hour after sleep time. Then I showed them how to break the floor so they'll be able to leave and return to the calls where it's broken. They'll be delighted with that little insight. For that, I thank you two, he replied with a polite bow.
How are you going to leave the call, Scatter? The walls are too high and there's nothing to climb, Hella asked.
Oh, those? No. Those walls were never the issue. It's the floors. After sleep time, if you leave your chamber, they'll stick you to them. That makes it tricky. Now that I got a launching pad and a spot to return to without getting stuck, I can just leap right over those walls, he said as he squatted down to stretch his legs. I'll be back before wake time, don't you worry. No one will be any the—
Take me with you, Hella blurted. Scatter paused. Senna frowned at his sister. No, Hella, you could get in big trouble if they catch you.
Oh, Finn, you're so caring and innocent, Scatter said. That's not gonna happen. You just haven't seen me really stretch my legs before, so I forgive your skepticism.
Take me with you, Hella reiterated. Scatter's grin disappeared.
Miss Hella, you're very new at using the unvanquished flame. I know in time, with proper training, you'll be able to go out on this kind of minor expedition. But I don't have time to teach you right now. I need to leave fast.
She ran to him and grabbed both of his hands as if holding him to the ground. Carry me then. I don't need to use the flame if you're doing it for both of us. I'm light, way lighter than those crates we moved today. Take me with you. Scatter narrowed his eyes.
Your sister sure is persuasive there, Finn.
Hella, no, Senna pleaded once more. It's too dangerous. I'll be fine, Finn. Trust me. You haven't seen what Scatter can do.
Scatter hooted. Oh, dear Hella, you have not seen what I can do yet either.
Before Senna could protest further, Scatter grabbed Hella up onto his back, crouched down low, eyed the top of the call walls, and shot up into the air. Senna rushed out of the chamber to look up, but they disappeared. Just then, the floors turned on. The portion he was standing on was the area Scatter had just smashed. His feet didn't compel him towards his chamber, proving that their deductions about the Asperite had been correct. He looked up at the top of the call walls one more time, the sun setting behind them, then turned around and walked back to his sister's bed, alone. Notes from the Acolyte. Much of the lore behind Theutons and their flame-wielding is still not well understood in Rayan society. It is considered by most to be a thing of myth and legend, yet the religious elites within Epol consider it to be the highest existential threat to the Rayan civilization. Ironically, it's only due to the religious order that the culled Theutons exist within Epol at all. Many within the military and civilian population would prefer to eliminate them altogether, but the religious refuse. They contend that it's the will of Soul to keep them alive, which is something no Rayan would dare to question.